What's going on, everyone? Jeremy here from The Quartering, and among the hilarity that is uh, Illinois, including a mayor that looks like a female version of Beetlejuice, they have now decided that Grand Theft Auto, among other video games, need to be banned in Illinois because a rise in carjackings. Somehow they're trotting out this old chestnut that video games in any way can be linked to real world bad behavior, even though no legitimate researcher has ever done so. In fact, dozens, and I will show you several, have disputed and said there is actually no link whatsoever between your IRL behavior and what happens in video games. That won't stop a Chicago state representative, though, who wants to halt the sale of video games that promote breaking the law. Illinois State Boomer Rep. Marcus Evans Jr. has introduced a bill that would prohibit the sale of games like Grand Theft Auto. According to Chicago Sun-Times, Representative Evans Jr. will amend a 2012 law which will ban the sale of video games depicting harm and motor vehicle theft with the driver or passenger present. Among the games that will be banned will be titles from Rockstar Games' Grand Theft Auto. The move was prompted as a rise of carjackings in Chicago, Evans Jr. said. Well, maybe it's because your leaders are so stupid that they think it's because of a video game. Maybe they need to worry about what's going on the streets, what's going on in Chirac every single weekend, and not worry about video games. Why isn't this a problem in every other major city? Well, I suppose it probably is. But it's not a problem in the suburbs where plenty of people play Grand Theft Auto. Now, the bill also changes the definition of a particular type of video game, such as Grand Theft Auto, to one in which which plays a character in the video game that is encouraged to perpetuate bad behavior on humans, in which the player ends or otherwise causes serious harm to another. So essentially a huge swath of modern day video games. In other Grand Theft Auto news, I don't care about. This is the story. This is the story here again from the local news. Grand Theft Auto ban. Illinois representative proposes banning popular video games, says it contributes. This is I don't really know how stupid you could be. I mean, let me just, again, here you see the Kansas City Star ban this video game, Illinois, and nobody's really putting together the data that disputes this. We can look at multiple articles. We can look at, if you know, okay, you can say what you want about PBS having a political slant, and they do, but the data here presented is relatively solid. You can see here, as speaking as a researcher who has studied this type of video game for almost 15 years, I can state that there is no evidence to support the claims that the media, that this type of media, whether it's like movies, music, or video games that depict, bad things and real world bad things are connected. As far back as 2011, the Supreme Court ruled that research did not find any clear connection between these type of video games and aggressive behavior. Criminologists who study all sorts of events specifically refer to those sorts of connections as a myth. And in 2007, the Media Psychology and Technology Division of the American Psychological Association released a statement I helped craft, suggesting reporters and policymakers cease linking these terrible events to video games, given the lack of any evidence for a link. This is moral panic. You could go back here. Beginning in the early 2000s, some scholars, anti-media advocates, and professional groups like the APA began working to connect a methodologically messy and often contradictory set of results to public health concerns about bad behavior. This echoed historical patterns of moral panic, such as the 1950s concerns about comic books, Tipper Gore's efforts to blame pop and rock music for the bad behavior in the 80s, particularly in the early 2000s. Dubious evidence regarding these type of video games was uncritically promoted. But over the years, confidence among scholars that these type of video games influence aggression has crumbled. You can look at the original statement here coming out from the Amplifier magazine. Again, we can look at, I know this is, gross, but we can go to CNN even. Video games are unlikely to cause real-world bad behavior. That was one thing that Trump said, which was absolutely boneheaded. We're ruled by a boomer class that has no real basis in actual knowledge. This is not even something like, hey, ha ha ha, you didn't know. This is like actively bad science being promoted to individuals. Again, medical groups and even the Supreme Court. The American Psychological Association has yet to update its policy statement on video games and aggression, and other groups such as the American Academy of Pediatrics also warn against this type of bad behavior. Video games, the Academy said in 2016, quote, should not use human or other living targets and award points for ending, because this teaches children to associate pleasures and success with the ability to cause pain to others. It found a significant, quote unquote, link between this type of media in general and aggressive thoughts and angry feelings. But no, they didn't. Some research suggests that instead of predisposing young people towards this type of thing, video games may in fact reduce real-world aggression, allowing people to channel their feelings into gaming consoles instead of other people. In 2016, study researchers analyzed crime data and found that general societal bad behavior decreased in the weeks after the release of popular video games. Well, that's because everyone was sitting at home playing their games. The idea that, you can make any real world correlation between particular video games and a particular individual's actions is absurd. Video games are not exactly this small niche thing. If they had any kind of profound, measurable effect on human interaction, we would see it in the streets everywhere. The fact that you can't make that association should be enough for you to laugh in the face of any moron trying to tell you this. The Supreme Court also, back in 2011, the justices ruled in a 7-2 decision that video games are protected under the Free Speech Amendment of the Free Speech section of the First Amendment, an opinion that cited existing research into aggression. Justice Scalia, writing for the court, said that psychological studies purporting to show a connection between the exposure to these type of video games and harmful effects on children do not prove such exposure causes minors to act aggressively. He added, and demonstrated effects are both small and indistinguishable from the effects produced by other media. Though the court's opinion came 8 years ago, current research still supports it. A study published in July looked at more than 3,000 youths in Singapore and took into account prior levels of aggression and impulse control. There was no link between these type of video games and future aggression, research found. A positive family environment, shocking, however, was a protective factor that reduced aggression and antisocial behaviors. Well, this is definitely not something the mainstream media would like to promote, but it's true. Having a stable place to spend your time, it probably has more of an impact on a particular individual than any video game they might play. If I lived in Illinois, and believe me, I live close enough, whoever this moron is would be out of office immediately. They should be laughed out of politics. They should be laughed out of having their opinion heard by anybody, because the idea that banning Grand Theft Auto in order to reduce crime, I mean, there's literally no actual hard science that links these two things, and it's 2021 for crying out loud. I did like 3 Google searches and I found actual research and evidence that pushes back against all this garbage. What this is video games being used as a cudgel to either deflect blame. If mom and dad spent a little more time with the kids, maybe they wouldn't be playing so many video games and they'd be outside doing, touching the grass and enjoying the birds and things like that. The idea that any amount of this video, I've played these type of video games my entire life, and I'm about as passive as they come. I don't feel any catharsis by playing them, but maybe some people do. The fact of the matter is, anybody that ever tries to link these two things, show them this thing called Google.com. I mean, it's full of actual research from people that have never linked these two things. If anyone tries to tell you differently, they're lying. I hope you enjoyed this video. We'll talk to you again real soon.